You said a couple of minutes ago that we still don't know what a memory is in terms of its brain instantiation. And I'd like to take a step back even further. And there are different types of memories. And I'm far from an expert on this, but there are short-term memories and long-term memories and procedural memories, visual memories, memories of facts, and on and on. And the first thing to ask is whether or not these titles or descriptions that I've given are just ways of categorizing things for the purpose of discussion, or whether they reflect deeper distinctions in the way memories are treated and processed by the brain.
Yeah, something that I have been surprised by and delighted by is all these categories that psychologists basically have invented. There's episodic memories, memories of events, of episodes from our life. There's a semantic memory, memory for facts, like what's the capital of France? And there's procedural memory, such as motor memory or visual memory. So how to ride a bicycle, how to reach into your pocket and pull out a quarter, which if you stop and think about it is not easy because you've got nickels that are very close to the same size. So there's things that the psychologists say, well, these feel like very different types of memories. And we now know that they're actually all coded and stored differently in the brain. So episodic memories are absolutely dependent on a structure called the hippocampus, which is sort of deep in the middle of the brain. And those episodic memories tend to turn into what we call semantic memories, which are memories of facts and general knowledge. So most people in your audience will know what the capital of France is.
Hopefully.
But no one will remember where they learned that. No one will remember the event of learning that fact. Even though at the time it happened, it was stored as an episodic memory. They could have come home and said, Mom, guess what the capital of France is? And if she was clever, she said, ooh, I don't know. What is it? And the child would say, oh, it's Paris. And she would remember the fact that in class today, her teacher showed them a map and told her the name Paris, and she remembered it. And then over the next, maybe just a week or month, or certainly the next 10 years, all of that memory evaporated except for the fact that Paris is the capital of France. And so it now is stored out in the cortex, or the bumpy part of the brain that you think of when you see a picture of the brain. And it's gone from the hippocampus, and it's no longer an episodic. You don't even know what year or whether you learned it in class or what. So there's these different types of memories, and they're actually stored differently. Procedural learning how to do things, that doesn't even require a hippocampus. If your hippocampus is destroyed either by a tumor or some diseases, so that you are amnesic and can't form new, quote, memories, you can still learn how to ride a bicycle. You can still learn how to type. So those are stored and encoded initially in different parts of the brain. So yeah, those different kinds of memories are stored physically in different places. Whether the way they're stored are particularly different from one another, we don't know, because we don't really understand how any of them are actually encoded in the brain.
I'm curious now, where are the procedural memories stored?
Well, it depends on the type, but a lot of them are stored in what's called the striate cortex, which is sort of in the middle of the brain again, but a little higher up. And they're also stored depending on modality. So if it's a motor skill, learning how to type a particular sequence rapidly, that'll go into the motor cortex, which is a pair of strips, one on each side for each side of your body, right about here in the brain. If it's an auditory learning or a visual learning, it'll occur in what's called auditory cortex, which is more on the side, or visual cortex, which strangely enough is way in the back of the brain. So it's stored, in essence, in the same place that it's experienced. So when a visual signal comes in, it goes to the back of your brain to visual cortex, and that's where the memory will be stored. It'll be stored in the form somehow that it was originally perceived.
The reason that I ask is that I understand that the brain sort of evolved outward, starting with the more core components. And I'm wondering, so you say episodic memories are stored in the hippocampus, but I'm guessing then linguistic memories are stored in the area of the brain that
It's newer
processes
cortex, right?
language. Right. And that's farther out than the hippocampus. So I'm wondering if evolutionarily episodic memories are more primitive, whereas linguistic memories are
Oh, I'm sure
more.
episodic memories are about as basic as you can go. Now, there's a problem talking about episodic memories because their definition includes an assumption of consciousness. Okay, so Endel Tolving describes an episodic memory as one that you can relive, one that you can bring back to mind and see again. So if I ask you, what did you have for lunch today? You can actually see the plate and see the food on it and remember the taste and whether there was anything off about it. And so the word to remember sort of has that implication of re-memorizing, of bringing it back into our mind. So when we talk about lower animals having episodic memory, we're on a little bit of squishy ground. Because if we want to imply the same concept, then those animals have to be conscious, which we don't know scientifically whether they are or not. You know that pup on your lap is conscious, right?
Yes, I think so. I
Right.
hope so.
But my daughter used to think that a rock she had was conscious. So, we have to have a little bit of lack of confidence about those decisions. I sometimes startle my students by saying there has never been a scientific experiment that showed that humans are conscious. We don't know how to ask that question. We don't know how to show what consciousness is. We just know, each of us individually, that we're conscious, and we know what that means, and we project it onto everybody else, which is probably a reasonable thing to do. But it wasn't a scientific experiment that showed us that humans are conscious. So with that caveat, there are memories of locations and emotions associated with those locations that we know rats have and mice have. And probably, I would assume, as far back as the midbrain existed, which was early on in mammalian evolution, if not further back than that. There was something like episodic memories, reminding us that berry is not a good berry to eat.